Hey everybody, Stinger here. I want to invite you to a pretty cool podcast.
Watch this film. Be quite nice. Have a good time. You'll be very evil. And you'll love that Danhausen.
Hey, this is Big Sexy Kevin Nash.
Yes, it is I, Big E, but more importantly, it is you.
And you might remember me from such YouTube greats as Being the Elite and Chris Daniels Almost Dies.
And if you're looking for the very best wrestling content, you better come to Good Mic Work Commentary.
And I'm just going to tell you now, as a role model, you got to tune into this because if you also want to be a role model, you got to learn from the best.
We have a rapport, and we have been so close over so many years. This is not a cameo or a paid endorsement in any regard. This is a message of friendship.
Man, we met 20 years ago, 21 years ago now. Time is flying, isn't it?
I want to wish you all the best in your YouTube channel, and hopefully I can maybe make a special guest appearance on there sometime.
And he used to say, "Hey, Greg Morgan," and he used to say, "Please call me Greg," and I wouldn't do it.
Good mic work commentaries.
Awesome YouTube channel. Now, if you've seen these videos before, you know what I'm talking about.
We would do verbal chain wrestling. You know, we'd be off in the yard, the schoolyard at recess.
And he's also a 40-year-old wrestling fan. That's a long damn time.
And we'd just be staring at each other, and he'd say, hammerlock. And I'd say, all right, I've reversed the hammerlock into a hammerlock of my own, then I put you in a headlock. And, you know, that would go on for hours.
He's not going to fill your head with bullshit. He's going to tell you real deal, what's up, and that's that.
Raw, Smackdown, NXT. This guy covers it all, my friends. I want you to go to his page, Good Mic Work on YouTube.
Check out Good Mic Work commentaries on YouTube.
But we would have fun. We would run around. There would be a wooden hoop we would hit with a stick, and it would go down a hill.
I'm about to go and watch a few videos myself.
It's a very practical apparatus.
We're really lacking in the world right now with some people that have a freaking brain cell.
And now look at him. He has more YouTube views and subscribers than I do, and I'm fine with it because I played such an integral role in his upbringing.
Don't you dare be sour.
We always talked about wrestling. He was a big Lou Thez guy, and of course I had an affectation for the Hackenschmidts.
Clap for Good Mic Work Commentaries.
This is RJ City, a wrestling rock on tour.
And feel the pow.
Listen to the podcast, subscribe.
You are watching Good Mic Work Commentaries.
Good Mic Work Commentaries.
Good Mic Work Commentaries.
Good mic work commentaries.
Just want to encourage all you guys to check out Good Mic Work Commentaries.
And if you don't, we're going to have a problem.
Do it.
Do it.
Do it now.
Thanks a lot for the encomium and the nice words about my father's Hall of Fame induction.
Hope our paths cross again sometime down the road. Would love to shake your hand again, and good luck on this podcast.
And you don't just watch it one time. You can rewatch every single one of them.
And now, Good Mic Work Commentaries and Greg Morgan presents the Winged Eagle Podcast.
Happy Saturday once again, everybody. What's going on? And welcome to your Winged Eagle podcast for March 5th, 2022. Happy AEW Revolution 2022 weekend. There is a lot going on in the next 48 hours, starting with, I believe, in just a couple of hours, apparently a mega huge house show at Madison Square Garden from WWE that they are being extremely tight-lipped and secretive about, with some title matches that apparently are going to have Wrestlemania implications. Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns are both set to defend their titles tonight. Neither man, at least last time I checked, had an opponent announced for tonight. So combine that with reports of the show remaining very secretive. Nobody's really revealing what they have planned for tonight, and apparently there is something major that's going to go down. Now, there's a lot of Cody Rhodes rumors. Revolution, of course, is tomorrow. You talk about stealing some of the buzz or headlines or spotlight away from Revolution one night before their pay-per-view. Have Cody show up tonight in Madison Square Garden, perhaps even in a title match. I don't think. I mean, there's been some ideas thrown around. Oh, Cody could show up as a surprise for Brock Lesnar. Roman interferes, helps Cody win the title and all this shit. So who knows what's going to happen? If whatever happens tonight at Madison Square Garden has anything to do with Cody Rhodes or a title change, I will record a video late tonight when I get home from work and have that up on the channel for you guys tomorrow morning so you can hear my thoughts. Because, of course, tomorrow night we're going to be up here after Revolution to talk about the whole show. So I'll try to get something up tonight if we have any earth-shattering news going down at Madison Square Garden. Now, unfortunately, I'm not going to be home. I got to head off to work in a couple of hours. So do me a favor. I need to rely on you guys in terms of keeping me filled in because I don't know how well I'm going to be able to keep my eye on social media or whatever. So head over to Twitter, follow me at Good Mic Work, and if you hear about news or anything that's going down on the show tonight, keep me updated over there. I would really, really appreciate it. And like I said, if we have any sort of industry-changing type of thing happen, I'll be up here to record a short video on that for you guys tomorrow morning. But we will be up here tomorrow night as well talking about Revolution. We're going to predict Revolution in this show right at the end of the podcast here. We will get into that. We got a ton of wrestling news to get into as well, including, like I said, some speculation on that MSG show. We got to talk about Tony Khan buying Ring of Honor. He made that announcement on Wednesday night Dynamite. Vince McMahon was a guest on the Pat McAfee show on Thursday, and it was probably about as in-depth of an interview that you're ever going to get out of Vince, especially, in today's day and age, 2022 or whatnot. So we'll kind of digest and unpack that a little bit, some of the interesting things that Vince discussed, and the Hall of Fame and Wrestlemania, all sorts of other stuff there. Like I said, still lots of Cody Rhodes rumors swirling around. We will get into a couple of them. This may be obsolete the next couple of hours, depending what happens at the Garden, but we will talk about that. Keith Lee was also a guest on Talk is Jericho, chronicling his last few days in the WWE. We'll talk a little bit about that. We will give a quick recap of last night's Smackdown. We saw a brand new Intercontinental Champion crowned in Ricochet, so that's kind of cool. No risk now, apparently, of Knoxville actually winning the IC title at WrestleMania, so that's okay. Also have a new U.S. champion this week crowned on Monday. Raw and Smackdown this week, brace yourselves, weren't bad shows. I mean, they were still WWE shows. It was still WWE and them giving us a lot of the same shit they always do. But overall, for WWE standards, I thought both shows this week were really good. And that's a good thing. Shows should be good, you would think, heading into WrestleMania. And we saw a few surprises. So we'll talk about last night's SmackDown, recap that. Touch on Raw a little bit from this past week because, like I said, there was a new champion crowned over there. And Edge, made a big heel turn, demolishing AJ Styles. And we'll preview what's plan for this week's Raw as well. We'll run through the ratings. We'll run through the current WrestleMania card. And then after that, we will talk a little bit about this past week's Dynamite, run through the results of Rampage last night. That incredible three-way TNT title match was the damnedest thing I've ever seen. And, of course, at the very end, we will predict the entire AEW Revolution card, including the buy-in, unless I'm counting wrong, 11 matches I have, or 12? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, 12 matches is announced total for tomorrow night. So look for a 5-hour night of wrestling if you include the buy-in. I would assume it's going to be a huge one tomorrow, and it's going to be fun. So make sure you subscribe. Make sure you click that like button. Like I said, go over to Twitter. Shoot me a follow over there so you can discuss the happenings in the wrestling world with me this weekend because I think there's a lot of shit that's going to happen. So we need to start getting into it here. Luckily today, I don't have any time constraints. We can probably have this extend to a good 2-hour podcast, get into as much stuff as we can, and, have at it. So I'm going to say hi to the chat here in a minute. Then I'm going to shout out the patrons. Then we will start running through the news. And like I said, right after that, we will get into SmackDown and WrestleMania before we wrap things up with Rampage, and Revolution. But thank you to everyone who is here on this Saturday afternoon. Apparently there's a UFC show tonight as well, so there's all sorts of stuff to deal with along with me or after me. And like I said, a lot of what I discuss here today might be obsolete in just a matter of a couple of hours, depending on what goes down at the Garden tonight. So it should be interesting, and it should be really fun finding out. But I want to cruise to the very top of the chat, say hi to Tata Nani, Lil Justin, ACGT, Chaz, Sam. We got George Morris in with a $5 drop. Thank you very much, dude. Hey, Greg, how are you doing? And how is Bub been working 75 hours a week? Jesus, man. Very busy. When is the next WrestleMania watch-along, and which one is next? I really apologize for these WrestleMania watch-alongs. I had planned to do a bunch of these already, but the situation with my cat kind of changed everything. And then tomorrow, Sunday, when I normally do these, is a pay-per-view. So we're not going to be able to do one until a week from tomorrow, and I got to decide which one that is. I kind of had a few of them penciled in to do in a row, and now that we've dropped a couple, I have to decide. So we'll talk about that this week. I'm thinking about possibly WrestleMania 20, maybe even WrestleMania 30. There's been talk of WrestleMania 22, 23. One of those might be fun. Potentially WrestleMania 3 if we want to go way back. We watched WrestleMania 10 a couple of weeks ago, so we've got lots of options, and I'll try to find one to do a week from tomorrow. So stay tuned to the channel. We'll do a classic pay-per-view watch-along next week, and then, of course, this coming Wednesday, we'll be back here to watch Dynamite together, and it should be really interesting after the fallout from Revolution. Andy Linnell is in the house. Big J, I'm not sure, Jet the Hawk, if I got you. Wrestling and Root Beer, good to see you. Deshaun Robinson, David Brown, and Nick Musser. Lots of monkey wrenches in the house today. Good to see you guys, as always. Conor McGregor fans. Thomas Aridia, thank you for the $5 as well. WWE has time to make WrestleMania good. I'm not happy with the title unification, but this can still be a good show. And there's been some talk and chatter this week. I think it was Meltzer that had reported this. I saw a lot of people talking about it on Twitter, but apparently this title unification, as we suspected right here on this very podcast 1 week ago, I was still having trouble wrapping my head around the fact that this is going to be an actual title unification. These two belts would become one. And part of the reason why I was skeptical of that is because they've announced nothing for the women. Now, the only thing that's interesting about the women is that I do believe they've got Becky and Bianca and Ronda and Charlotte on the same night, night one. So that makes it interesting. You would think these two matches would be split up on separate nights, but the fact that they have put them together made me wonder that if maybe they could hotshot an angle either at WrestleMania or right after, maybe even at WrestleMania, to where they unify the women's belts on night one and then turn around and unify the men's belts on night two. Now, last week we chronicled all the pros and cons of a title unification. I'm very much in favor of it, only because everything just sucks. So why not kind of go back to the way things were, try that again, and it might even elevate your undercard titles, which this week gave us really good evidence of that. I mean, putting the belt on Balor this week in that great match he had with Damian Priest, a little change of attitude there in Damian Priest as well. And Ricochet, one of the best wrestlers in the company that WWE sometimes forgets is even on the roster, picked up the IC title last night on Smackdown. So we discussed last week that if they just went to one men's title, you could essentially elevate the US and IC and make those titles very important on their respective brands, and you can schedule and book championship main event matches for those titles, much like AEW does constantly with the TNT title on their show. And those matches have been amazing. So WWE's got just as good a talent on their side as AEW does on theirs. So why not try to make these belts that were once prestigious again? So moving away from potentially putting the IC belt on Johnny Knoxville and giving the belt to Ricochet, potentially setting some big ladder matchup at WrestleMania, or maybe even a match with Sheamus. A lot of people are thinking that the IC belt will now actually be defended in a multi-man type of match at Mania, and that's great. So poor Ricochet might have a small and short run here, but at least they gave him some gold, and at least they seem to have pivoted directions on that a little bit. But when you heard the story this week about WWE calling this a unification match, but when WrestleMania is over, whoever wins is still going to have the two titles, that just means that they're going to ununify them, likely immediately following WrestleMania, which means, what's the point? I don't even think WWE quite understands what a unification is. So it's still kind of yet to be seen and remains to be seen what they're really going to do with the championships at WrestleMania. I don't know. I've quit long ago trying to figure WWE out. They make my balls hurt. Red Raven Rucker, good to see you. JL, what's good with you? Rehan Ahmad, good to see you as well. Sammy winning the IC title from Shinsuke Nakamura was pointless. Not really. Think Ricochet's a babyface, and Nakamura and Boogs are kind of being baby faces right now too. Ricochet got an amazing pop last night when he won the IC title. I don't think that pop would have been as good if he beat Shinsuke Nakamura. Plus, you also used the Intercontinental title to pay off that situation, because Sami Zayn earned an Intercontinental title shot months ago, took him forever to get it. He got the title back, had a big celebration. Knoxville comes out and screws him, gives them a reason to make the challenge and issue the challenge for WrestleMania, a pissed off Sami wanting revenge. Now you got the belt out of that situation, and now you got the belt on a guy who has never held that title before, that is one of the greatest and most athletic guys in all of this fucking industry right now, and they've put the belt on him, and he'll probably be set up to have a pretty exciting title match now at WrestleMania. I don't think it was pointless at all. I know it feels like that when you have a one week run or a 2-week run or whatever it is, but I think maybe the match with Ricochet and the title win there kind of came out of nowhere. That bubbled up very quickly, and Ricochet got the shot this week. But in terms of what it set up and what it led to, I think it all fit in place just fine. So I wasn't too worried about that. WWE's got a lot more problems than what they did this week with the Intercontinental title. That's for sure. What's up, James Jones? Good to see you as well. Yeah, we're going to be talking about MSG very soon. Sonic Plays, and Ben is in the house. Atomic Cody, Monique is here. Victor, Kevin, Steven, right on, man. John Gorman, I want to thank you for the $5 as well. What's up, Greg? Crazy week of news. The Cody news is constantly changing daily, and TK buying Ring of Honor is so big in getting a future streaming service deal. Yeah, we're going to talk about that in a minute, and we're also going to talk about one day that Impact or TNA library you would think is going to have to come up available for someone, and that is going to make a very interesting bidding war between WWE and AEW, I would think, because that video library will be very valuable, especially when it comes to streaming and things like that. Excuse me. Good to see Rodrigo and Michael. We got Wrestling and Root Beer dropping in $2 as well. Thank you for that. According to rumors, WWE has no plans for Asuka. Big surprise. Apparently, she did say that she's not cleared quite yet, but considering how long she's been gone and considering WWE's track record with never knowing what the fuck to do with extremely talented people, when you hear a story like WWE has no plans for someone like Asuka, you believe it, because I totally believe it. That company, I could see them having no plans for Brock Lesnar one day, because they can't think. Thinking's hard. And if they do think, it tends to hurt them. So yeah, what a mess this company is. Let's get into stuff here and wrap up the pleasantries. If you don't mind, please hit that thumbs up button for me and keep those likes up, because it's going to be a big weekend. All right, let's start with the wrestling news. Like I said at the beginning of the podcast here, there is a big Madison Square Garden show tonight by WWE, just a house show. I'm assuming this begins at 8 p.m. Eastern, which is probably a couple of hours. It could begin at 7 p.m. I'm not sure. But it's going to be coming up right after this podcast, most likely. Now, there's a match listing for this. We do have a card. We have Becky versus Bianca and Rhea Ripley in a triple threat. We have Finn Balor taking on Damian Priest, the Usos versus the New Day, and RK Bro versus Alpha Academy. I would assume, because this is a house show, that all of these are title matches. So these are just going to be title defenses. I think everybody will probably walk away with all of their titles intact, except, maybe the Usos could drop theirs or something. I have no idea. And also, we have Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns both defending their respective world titles against opponents to be determined. So at first, I think it was supposed to be Roman and Seth. That's been removed now, apparently, and Roman has no listed opponent. Unless I have that wrong, feel free to correct me. And Brock Lesnar, of course, was supposed to wrestle Bobby Lashley, but Lashley has been injured, so he's been pulled from the show as well. And Meltzer was reporting this week that these matches, or at least what goes on with Roman and Brock, is going to be professionally filmed. So they are going to film this, and they are going to replay the fuck out of it, probably on Monday and next week's SmackDown leading up to WrestleMania. And whatever they have planned here sounds like it's pretty big. Now, during the day today and throughout the day, several different wrestling sites and journalists and accounts were tweeting about this. WrestleVotes encouraged us all to keep an eye on the Madison Square Garden show tonight. People like Meltzer, Sean Ross Sapp, and others have said that WWE's been very secretive. There's really not a lot of internal information flowing through in terms of what they have planned for tonight, and it sounds like they've got something in their back pocket, and WWE should take advantage of this. This is a huge opportunity. This is why competition can be fun. Now, in terms of what they have planned, who knows? But of course, a lot of the one name that's on a lot of people's mind, and probably the main name on everyone's mind, is Cody Rhodes, because there's been a lot of talk about him, his future, where he's going to wind up. Ring of Honor being purchased by AEW has a lot of fans thinking that maybe Cody could reconsider and come back to AEW, especially since Ring of Honor is now in the fold. He could be a big part of that, perhaps. But, you know, my gut instinct, knowing Cody Rhodes the way we do, and how we've seen Cody Rhodes interact with the audience in the past few months, even about a year now, this is a guy that really likes the spotlight. This is a guy that really has his own aspirations for his own career, and you're really not going to get any more exposure than if you're in the WWE. So if you're Cody and you can come into the WWE and make a big splash either in Madison Square Garden, the world's most famous arena, maybe come out at WrestleMania or come out the night after WrestleMania, that's going to get you a ton of exposure, and I think Cody really wants that for his legacy, for his career. So when you think about the purchase of Ring of Honor, yeah, that's awesome for AEW, but I don't know if that's necessarily enough to make Cody Rhodes turn around and say, oh, I want to be a part of Ring of Honor and really be a part of growing the business. He could do that in NXT if he wanted as well. I've heard NXT be brought up a lot when it in regards to Cody Rhodes as well, because of, you know, Dusty's history there. But you'd think that Cody is going to want to be on the biggest stage possible, and I couldn't envision, never could have imagined him leaving AEW as quickly as he did. So the fact that he did and actually went through with that departure means that he probably has much bigger and grander aspirations for himself. So regardless of the various rumors swirling around from Cassidy Haynes, from Meltzer, a lot of contradicting stories here. Some people say the talks with WWE has fizzled out and Cody might be reconsidering. Others have said that there are internal plans for Cody Rhodes in WWE at WrestleMania, and the creative team has been told to get plans in place for him in the event that he does sign. Doesn't mean he will or doesn't mean he has, but in the event that he does, apparently they do have some ideas for him. So there's lots swirling around, and to me, that's what makes all of this so fun. It's not about being able to properly call this or getting it right or being able to brag on social media or YouTube, I called it, I said so. It's not about that. I like not fucking knowing. Who wants to know? Who wants to know what's going to happen? Not me. I want Cody to show up when I'm least fucking expecting it. And like I said, WWE's got a massive opportunity here now that we have competition to really one-up AEW one night ahead of their big pay-per-view, their big 12-match card tomorrow that looks fucking stacked. So if I'm WWE and there is a chance to get Cody and he is going to come in or he is going to sign, I think the Madison Square Garden show is a great place to debut him. Fans are going to automatically say, it's a house show. That's stupid. It's different. Madison Square Garden is different. What do the kids say? It hits different. The MSG shows are not what they used to be, but there is still a mystique to those MSG shows. There's a tradition there. There's something very special about them. Even Vince McMahon usually turns out for these things, and the crowd usually enjoys their times there. It's on my bucket list. I would love to go to any show, even if it was an MSG or a house show, at MSG, just because of the atmosphere, the vibe, and the tradition in that building. My very first, I've told this story 1,000 times on this podcast, my very first wrestling memory ever was little 4-year-old Greg looking through a wrestling magazine and seeing pictures of the series of matches between Dusty Rhodes and superstar Billy Graham for the WWF title back in the late 70s. It was like a 3-match series in MSG. Dusty came up from Florida, worked a trio of matches with Billy Graham, and they were great. And that was like my first flashbulb memory of wrestling, is seeing pictures of those matches, specifically the bull rope match where Dusty is hanging Billy Graham from the top rope, very reminiscent of what CM Punk, what was done to CM Punk last Wednesday on Dynamite by MJF. So for Cody to return in a huge way, come back to WWE in this building where his dad performed and all that, is just kind of a fun little tie-in for me personally as a wrestling fan. So I wouldn't mind if Cody showed up tonight. There's been a lot of WWE World Championship title changes in that building. I really have a hard time wrapping my head around the idea that Cody could come back tonight and actually take the title away from Brock or Roman. That would fucking blow my mind. Especially if he came out to face Roman, Brock Lesnar then attacks or does something to Roman Reigns, and then Cody wins the Universal title. and then Brock and Roman go into WrestleMania, and Brock is now just defending his own title against Roman, and then maybe Roman beats him. I have a hard time really, truly believing that that's a possibility. But if it was, could you imagine the headlines? Could you imagine the thunder and the buzz that would take away from Revolution for one of AEW's poster boys to jump ship, go to WWE in their living room, in their biggest arena and the most famous one they've ever ran shows in, winning the title, now going into WrestleMania as champion, and then tomorrow night AEW's got to try to have a pay-per-view and try to ignore all this stuff? It's a great opportunity if you're WWE. So I want to see both companies be presented with opportunities like this to one-up the other one. I don't care which side it is. I hope AEW does the same thing when they are in this position. So WWE does have a chance tonight, and when all the fans try to think about when the best time for Cody to debut is, I think fans are just programmed to think it has to be the night after Mania or it has to be at Mania. Not necessarily. I'm the type of guy that likes shit to be different. And if Cody returned on a house show, no less, that would be huge. And then if you add a title switch to that, that would be crazier. Because we have heard the rumors that if Cody comes in, apparently he's going to be treated as a big deal, although I suppose he could be treated as lesser of a deal and actually go after the US or IC or something like that. But if it does turn out to be Cody, and that's what the big secret is, and that's what WWE is keeping under wraps and keeping so tight-lipped, I'm going to be probably one of the few that's going to be totally down with this because of the buzz it's going to create on social media, the chatter it's going to create, and the thunder it's going to take away from Revolution. And this is coming from a huge AEW fan. Now, I love AEW. I'm going to be kissing their ass here in just a couple minutes. But I would love to see shit like this go down, because Vince McMahon on the Pat McAfee show even brought this up when McAfee was mentioning competition at AEW by name. And Vince reiterated what we've always known from the Monday Night War days, is that competition brings out the best. And I think it can do that for both companies. So WWE scoring Cody here tonight, having him debut in the Garden, taking all the thunder away from Revolution, should prompt maybe a little bit of payback down the road too, which only benefits us. So we will keep our eye on that MSG show. Who knows what's going to happen? If it doesn't turn out to be Cody, I have a hard time believing that Roman and Brock are just going to come out there and simply have successful title defenses against regular roster members that we see every week. If that's the case, then why is WWE being so quiet about everything? If they're being so secretive and there's a whole bunch of chatter and rumblings online about something big going down, and then WWE gives the fans nothing, isn't that going to be weird, and that's going to be a disappointment? So you kind of believe that there is something pretty big planned for tonight, because otherwise, why the secrecy? What's the point? It's just a house show. You know what I mean? So we'll keep our eye on the Garden tonight. Hopefully something awesome happens. And like I said, if it does turn out to be Cody or anything major, or if CM Punk jumps ship, or if Tony Khan comes out in the middle of the ring in Madison Square Garden, or anything bonkers like that, when I get home from work tonight, late tonight, I will record a short little commentary on that, throw it up on the channel for you guys to enjoy in the morning over a bowl of oatmeal. So in the meantime, please let me know on social media and Twitter what you know of this show and what's going on as we go through the night. Good to see Divine Ricks stopping in here as well. Good to see you, my friend, WWE fan forever, and Vash is in the house. Anybody else that I've missed shout-outs to, I apologize. Victor Colon, thank you, man, for that $5. My friend just texted me, and he thinks Stone Cold is going to wrestle Brock tonight. He said there's a ton of Austin shirts at MSG. That's a good point. We never brought up Stone Cold Steve Austin, because he's been rumored, of course, to come back into the company as well and work a match at WrestleMania against Kevin Owens, Seth Rollins, or both. And what better place to bring him back? You know, he's had some pretty famous matches in Madison Square Garden himself, that Stone Cold. You know he'd get the pop of a lifetime in there. Don't forget, he stunned Vince McMahon in that building 25 years ago. So I think that would be great to bring him out. I mean, would he actually win the fucking title, man? Would he actually beat Brock Lesnar and Stone Cold Steve Austin wins the WWE title tonight? Holy shit. I will definitely be up tomorrow to talk about that if that happens this evening. But think about what that would mean. What if Austin comes back, beats one of those guys, Brock or Roman, for the title with help from the other one, and now he's champion. Now he gets to do what Goldberg did back in 2017. Win the title 1 month before WrestleMania, drop it at Mania. And it could be in reverse this time. You know, well, shit, that's going to be tough for Kevin. Well, Kevin Owens is a heel, so it would work out just fine. But if Austin won the title tonight and then went into WrestleMania and dropped it to Kevin Owens, you talk about a full circle moment for Kevin Owens after being, you know, after losing the Universal title to Goldberg, never really getting his rematch. And then that was the end of it. Then he hasn't been really in the title picture aside from a couple of times here and there getting some title shots. So that could be interesting. Who knows? I don't know. Austin or Cody definitely seems likely, though, and I think that would be fun. Tomorrow night on Raw, incidentally, I was going to mention this later on, but I'm sorry, not tomorrow night on Raw, Monday night on Raw. They have a few interesting things advertised. Number one is Edge explaining himself. There's also a Miz and Logan Paul homecoming party, but there's also a Jerry Lawler appearance. What's that all about? Why would he just randomly be advertised for a Monday Night Raw appearance? Makes me think he's going to be in the ring doing something, somebody's going to fuck with him, and then somebody's going to come out and save him. So my theory is that Lawler is in the ring doing something. Kevin Owens or Rollins or both come out, start fucking with him. Glass shatters, Austin has a stunner party, and everybody's happy. So maybe that's what Lawler is there to set up. I don't know. I don't know what other history Lawler has with whatever town they're in on Monday or anything like that. Anything that would warrant an actual Lawler appearance where he needs to be in the ring doing shit. I don't understand what they're doing there. So if you guys have any ideas what the Lawler stuff could be, let me know. It could tie in to the Steve Austin stuff somehow. It is possible. Did I get all the super chats? I think I did. Right on. Remember Stone Cold Stunner Brock in the Garden back in 2004? I talked about Austin and Brock's little issues they had with each other leading up to WrestleMania 20. I remember they had a full-on brawl on one episode. I think it was Smackdown. And we talked about that last week as well when we talked about Austin getting in the ring. To me, it was never about Austin being medically cleared. I personally believe Austin has always been medically cleared to work a match. I just believe he hasn't, because even when he became the sheriff and that first few years there, he was physical all the time. He stunned every McMahon, including Linda, multiple times since retiring. And I've always believed that Austin physically could do it. It's punches and kicks. How fucking hard is that? He can easily do that into his 50s. No big deal. So I think it was just about the right time, the right opponent, and the Hulk Hogan stuff, the CM Punk stuff. None of that worked out. Now he's got a chance to work with somebody very entertaining. Like I said, in either Kevin Owens or Rollins or both. They could even do a tag team match. They could even tag Austin and Goldberg up. Think about that. You know, what if Goldberg and Austin have a match against Seth and Owens? You know, that it might not be Austin versus Goldberg, because I don't think we want that, but Austin and Goldberg together would be quite the visual, I would think. But who knows what they're going to do at Mania. But that Lawler appearance on Raw has me a little bit suspicious. But we'll talk about that more this week, and most likely, depending on what happens at MSG tonight, I will probably be up here on Monday night as well doing a Raw review, because I have a feeling we're going to have a lot to discuss. All right, before I get into Tony Khan buying Ring of Honor, let me say hi to Divine Ricks, who's dropping in with $5 as well. Hey, Greg, do you think we're going to have any surprises tomorrow night at Revolution? By the way, it's an interesting time in the world of professional wrestling. That might be the understatement of the year, Divine, or at least the understatement of the weekend, because there's a lot of stuff going on. I think tomorrow at Revolution, I don't know if we're going to get any major surprise. I do think we could get a Johnny Gargano or a Bray Wyatt, or who else is out there right now that's just a huge signee waiting to pop up? Cesaro is probably another guy, because he doesn't have any no-compete to worry about. And with Ring of Honor now being acquired by AEW, I would really like to see them bring in Claudio ASAP. I thought he would maybe have some fun, go, pick up some bookings some places, and, just decompress, maybe reset before coming into AEW. But with Ring of Honor now being in the fold, I need him there. I need him there yesterday. So we could see Cesaro tomorrow, but we'll get into more of that as we go through the predictions here in a minute. I have not done any sound checks. You guys would tell me if you couldn't hear me. I just wanted to make sure that we're all good over here. All right, man. Let's see. All right, that kills all that. I'm reading some of these comments in the chat. Y'all are funny. Anywho, so this past week on Dynamite, there was a big Tony Khan announcement advertised. They had already done this kind of the week before. We didn't really get any announcement. And this time they let us know that it would, in fact, be Tony Khan himself making this announcement. And he opened up Dynamite to make this announcement. And I did appreciate him not wasting any time and even telling the fans, hey, we got to get into wrestling tonight. I'm not going to sit here and cut a 20-minute promo to tell you what my plans are. And he just got right into it. But so I liked that. However, Tony Khan also reiterated my opinion that I think in a kayfabe sense maybe, or maybe even a little combination of kayfabe and reality, I think AEW does need somebody like a William Regal to perform these tasks, to operate as the Jack Tunney, to come out and make announcements on the company's behalf when it comes to major announcements like that, like a spokesperson. Tony Khan can still be referenced. Tony Khan can still be standing there even if he wants to be. But I think there needs to be kind of a kayfabe president or something, because Tony Khan screamed this announcement into all of our ears. He's just not accustomed to being on the mic. I was laughing my ass off at how many people were dunking on him and shitting on him for not being able to cut a promo. I'm like, when has this guy ever needed to cut a promo in his life? He's a businessman. He's been fucking working his whole life. He's not accustomed to being in a ring, talking to an audience. Why don't you try to get in the ring and cut a fucking promo? You think you'll be any better? Give me a break. You might be able to cut one in front of a mirror, but can you cut one in front of 15,000 people? F off. Tony Khan is not, if Tony Khan, to me, it's much worse when a wrestler can't cut a promo or somebody who's been in the business for 10 years can't talk worth of shit. Tony Khan's not really expected to be out there cutting wrestling promos. It's not really who he is, and that comes out very, very clearly when he speaks, because he's just not much of a mic guy. And he screamed this entire announcement, which I got a big kick out of. I don't know why fans have to be such tight asses about everything, and they just refuse to have any fun. But people are like, mad. They're angrily tweeting about how bad Tony Khan sucks at talking. I'm like, did you not hear what he said? Like, to me, that's so much more important. Who cares that a guy who is very rarely going to be on TV cutting promos anyway, who cares if he sucks at it? But I think that having somebody come into the company to make these announcements might be a better idea. That's just all I'm going to say. But Tony Khan's big announcement was that he has acquired Ring of Honor Wrestling. Now, this is huge for a lot of reasons. Number one is it expands AEW a little bit, and it gives them what we speculated on Wednesday and has been pretty much been confirmed, or at least those are the reports, is that Ring of Honor will operate basically as a developmental system for AEW. That's expansion. That's good. Ring of Honor also has a shit ton of history, and there are 40 plus wrestlers, I think, on the AEW roster that have worked in Ring of Honor before. And you think about a lot of guys like Daniel Bryan and CM Punk, or Bryan Danielson, and CM Punk, and those huge names, plus a lot of ones you could bring in. You could bring Cesaro in, you could bring Joe in, and there's so many wrestlers there that worked in the last few years of Ring of Honor specifically that have a lot of ties to that. So it sounds like they are going to run Ring of Honor and actually run shows, and a lot of the talent will bounce back and forth, and a lot of AEW talent that has history in Ring of Honor will probably make appearances there. Bryan Danielson will, Punk will, and to me that's very fun and that's very awesome. Another big part of this acquisition is the video library. It is so refreshing to know that tape libraries are starting to land somewhere else other than Stamford, Connecticut, because WWE basically owns everything. A lot of fans complain about Peacock. Yes, WWE does make available a lot of wrestling content, but there's a lot that they don't. There's a lot of tape libraries that are just sitting there doing nothing. That's why I've always been a big believer in collecting your own footage. I have hard drives loaded with shows that I have collected myself from my tape trading days that I've uploaded to DVDs and ripped onto hard drives digitally, so I can access anything I want, regardless of the status of the internet or whatever WWE is doing. But in the modern age today of the internet and streaming, tape libraries are even more valuable than they've ever been before, because 25 years ago, a tape library would be valuable to you if you wanted footage for documentaries, or if you wanted to re-release match compilation DVDs or anything like that. Now with streaming, you can just put anything the fuck you want up there. So WWE's got so much stuff. If they were to acquire Ring of Honor, I worry that the Ring of Honor footage would be largely lost or buried, or maybe, it wouldn't be something that would be pushed to the fans very much, considering all the great history and wrestling they have there. For AEW to pick this up, and with the rumors of them, because one of the rumors of Tony Khan's announcements last Wednesday was a possible streaming deal with HBO Max that actually could still already be done. That could be a done deal. They just haven't announced it yet. And something like this, expanding your tape library to that degree, because you got to remember, AEW is less than 3 years old. You add the Ring of Honor footage to that now, that makes, a streaming deal for you maybe much more profitable. And I believe they paid a pretty good amount. Is it somewhere like $30 million? Way more than I thought for Ring of Honor. WWE bought WCW for $2 million, which still blows my mind that they were able to pick up that video library for that fucking price. I think Tony Khan did pay a little bit more for Ring of Honor, but I'm glad that we have a wrestling owner with billions of dollars who can compete financially with Vince, who isn't afraid to spend his money or potentially even outbid WWE if need be, because apparently WWE was interested in buying Ring of Honor. They had conversations and discussions with them, and whatever fell through, and Tony Khan slipped in and picked it up. And to me, that's a big win, because it widens the playing field just a little bit. Now, like I said earlier about Impact Wrestling, I have no idea about the details of Anthem Media's ownership of them and what's going on there, but that tape library, to me, Impact and TNA, just got a lot more valuable, because when or if the day ever comes that becomes available, think about that bidding war, because you've got an opportunity on both sides. If Tony Khan is able to acquire Impact and TNA's tape library on top of Ring of Honor and on top of, his own company, AEW, that would really balance the scales a little bit. That would almost make Tony Khan the Vince McMahon of the 2000s. Anything that's not Vince McMahon, Tony Khan owns. And then anything that is Vince McMahon, prior to that, Vince owns, because he owns ECW and WCW and WCCW and all the Mid-South shit and all the NWA stuff and AWA. I mean, Vince owns every fucking library imaginable, from the 1900s. But now you get into the 2000s, if you have Tony Khan kind of cornering the market on that, now you've got two places for fans to go to access just about any piece of wrestling footage they want. They got WWE with all the shit they own, and now you've got AEW on HBO Max, where you can access Ring of Honor, you can access TNA, a lot of stuff. And I think a lot of fans would be willing to pay for that. And so when that day ever comes, WWE or Tony Khan and AEW would have a great chance to expand their video library and their streaming capabilities, probably double it. And by the same token, WWE could spend some money to stop that from happening. If they really wanted to, head AEW off at the pass and say, let's acquire this footage so they don't. That way they don't really increase their value, and they're another big professional wrestling supplier out there, with three major companies that they can have footage for. So WWE might find that as reason enough to really bid hard for that library. Now, this is all speculative. I have no idea when or if Impact or TNA's tape library or, the company itself will ever become available or for sale. But if it does, I think it could make things behind the scenes very interesting, and it could be a major fourth down play for pro wrestling. It's either going to continue WWE's dominance, or it's going to slightly balance the scales a little bit if Tony Khan and AEW are able to have that under their umbrella as well. And they already have been working with Impact a little bit as it is. And, there's been talk of the forbidden door of New Japan to be kicked in as well. So I really think it's best for fans to not be just reduced to relying on Vince and WWE only for professional wrestling content. The fact that there's another game in town, how any fan can look at that as a negative thing, I will never know. It blows my mind how people will say, Tony Khan, it's one of the saddest and most silliest displays, I think, of anus-aching hate from that special section of fans. How one of their go-to criticisms of Tony Khan is that he got all his money from his dad. He got all his money from his dad. Look at any fucking wealthy person or family out there. His dad just didn't say, here, have $1 billion. His dad just gave him a job that pays well. That's all. Like you see in every single fucking family everywhere. If your dad was $1 billion, or if your dad was a billionaire, I got news for you. You ain't working at McDonald's. You're going to work for your dad, and you're probably going to make a lot of money too. That's the way it goes. Tony Khan could have tripped over a used dildo and fallen into the money. Who cares? Who cares where he got it? The fact is, we have a billionaire who is a lifelong wrestling fan and is willing to invest his fortune into the expansion of the business, create jobs, and widen and diversify the playing field. So wrestling fans like us don't have to rely on one crazy 75-year-old nutcase to watch our wrestling. We have options. We have competition. Most of all, we have alternatives. So if you don't like something you're seeing on one place, you can go somewhere else and do another place and watch something else. That's what makes wrestling competition great. That's what we want, for fans to root for the failure of another wrestling company going up against WWE, or not even going up against WWE, just being there as an alternative to WWE for fans like us to watch. To view that as anything other than good doesn't really make you a wrestling fan, in my mind. Tony Khan's not perfect. He's going to make mistakes. He's going to fuck up from time to time, the whole nine. He's not perfect. Shit, I don't really like what I'm hearing about that Chavo Guerrero stuff, to be honest with you. But you're never going to find anybody in life, not even a friend, much less a wrestling promoter, that's going to be perfectly in line with all of your stupid fucking beliefs. So I believe that fans need to try a little bit harder at separating that, because I hate that this stupid war has taken away from the fact that a lot of fans are failing to realize that this is something that we as fans, maybe you guys are just too fucking young to remember when we had this before, and you've been so programmed just to think Vince, Attitude Era, Ruthless Aggression, John Cena. You forget that when wrestling has options, that's when it makes it the best. TNA had a chance to do that. TNA was really on fire there for a while, providing some great wrestling, but everything was a mess internally, with the ownership issues they had and the Dixie Carter stuff and the financial problems they had. They gave the fans a great alternative. They were gaining some steam, but they didn't have that financial backing, that internal structure to keep them going for years and years and years. You got that in Tony Khan. What have I been saying for the last 10 years on this podcast? Nobody is ever going to compete with Vince unless you get some crazy billionaire sports team owner who loves wrestling and is willing to spend his money. And I kept throwing out names like Mark Cuban because that was the only guy that came to mind, because he seems a guy who's like that, who would just spend money to have fun and do what he believes in. So we stumbled across this Tony Khan guy, who's not perfect by any means, but he's a goofy kind of aw shucks lifelong wrestling fan with a lot of wrestling knowledge, who loves wrestling, loves the business, wants to make it better, wants to expand it, wants to create jobs for others, and wants to give fans other options. Explain to me why there's any negativity attached to this at all. Explain to me why there are so many people against this idea. It's because they're not wrestling fans. They're so wrapped up in arguing with people they're never going to fucking meet on Twitter that they don't think critically at all. They just follow Jim Cornette and they repeat all of his McTwinkle fuck nicknames that he comes up with, because they can't come up with shit on their own. They're uninspiring, they're unoriginal, they're whiny, and they're dicks. So stop rooting against the success of pro wrestling. To me, that's so counterintuitive and so fucking dumb. So Tony Khan reaching out, buying Ring of Honor, tells me that he's a guy that is not going to be shy about spending some money. When you got $1 billion, fucking what's $1 million bucks? That's like, what, all fives? Okay, here you go. Where Vince McMahon and WWE, now that they're publicly traded and they've been shedding, so much of their talent and really changing their business model overall to really get those bottom line profits, as attractive as possible for shareholders and a potential sale, they might not be wanting really to go around and throwing a ton of money around to buy up old wrestling companies or defunct companies or tape libraries or anything like that. So I'm hoping that if there ever is a bidding war and it really comes down to who's just going to pay more, I think for once Vince McMahon, since the Ted Turner days, is going to be outbid. To me, that's good. That helps us as wrestling fans just balance shit out a little bit. That way, if you hate AEW, fine. Go watch WWE. If you hate WWE, fine. Go watch AEW. If you hate them both, watch The Price is Right. And if you love them both, watch them both. To me, it's so simple and doesn't really need to be overthought, but that's what fans do. So Tony Khan now has Ring of Honor. It's probably going to operate as a developmental company for AEW, which is really going to help a lot of their talent as well. They've moved Dark and Elevation into the studio setting there, which I think is also a good move for them. Things are starting to come together. Now, a couple of fears I have and concerns I have about Ring of Honor. Number one, as it relates to Tony Khan, if they're going to relaunch Ring of Honor in terms of the people who work backstage and the production crew guys and a lot of the wrestlers, who they're going to keep on, who they're not going to keep on, and is somebody going to be put in charge of Ring of Honor? Cody was a name that did come up this week. Oh, Cody could come back to AEW since they've bought Ring of Honor, and he could be put in charge of Ring of Honor, kind of like Triple H was in charge of NXT. Maybe, but I kind of don't see that happening. I still think Cody is destined for WWE, although I could be wrong. But you see what WWE has done to the NXT Black and Gold, and they've taken that away and given us, really when you look at WWE's style of programming, as much as I hate to admit it, and I'm just disgusted that Triple H's vision of the Black and Gold brand has been destroyed, for what WWE gives its audience, it probably was the right move. So now AEW's got a chance to basically take Ring of Honor and pick up where the Black and Gold left off. They're not going to have talent as good as the Black and Gold did at the end, especially right at first, but they have a chance now to kind of take that portion of the fans. Maybe because Tony Khan probably watched those NXT shows and like, fuck, I could do that, man. It's kind of that's my vibe. That's the way AEW feels, I always thought. I felt like AEW picked up where the Black and Gold left off. Now AEW is going to create their own little NXT, and they're going to be doing it with a company that's already been in existence for a long time and has a lot of wrestling history in Ring of Honor. So my one request to AEW and Tony Khan is that if they are going to change up the Ring of Honor logo in any way, don't go too crazy. Remember back in the Invasion angle when WWE changed the WCW logo and they unveiled that ugly red logo, as if the Invasion angle didn't have enough problems as it was, and there was already a whole bunch of regular or well-known WCW talent that was absent from that whole thing. Then you're going to change the logo too. So not only is the talent unrecognizable, so's the logo. It never felt like WCW to me. So I'm fine with making it spicy, spice it up a little bit, give it a little bit of a facelift, make it a little flashier, but try to keep the overall tradition of the logo intact. I think that would be the best thing from a wrestling fan's perspective, to be able to still draw those feelings of nostalgia or emotion out of a wrestling company's logo. That stuff's very important to a fan like me. So I think whatever they do with the Ring of Honor logo and however they relaunch this, I hope that there are still aspects of the original Ring of Honor that still have influences on what the new Ring of Honor is going to be. That's kind of my only hope. So I think it's really exciting news. Hopefully, like I said, Tony Khan will put somebody in charge of Ring of Honor. I don't want Tony Khan to wear too many hats, because Vince McMahon is crazy enough as it is, and I don't think anybody should try to duplicate what he does, and I don't think anybody should burn themselves out to where it affects your decision-making, clouds your instincts, and things like that. And if Tony Khan is spread too thin, that's when things like that can happen, when you take your eye off the ball, when you got too many things going on and you don't pay attention, and then shit goes awry. So I just hope it all works out. I hope Tony Khan's got enough people in place and infrastructure to be able to run both of these companies, and they don't rush anything. Get your ducks in a row, get everything figured out with what you want to do with Ring of Honor, and then launch it. I'm assuming it might be like a YouTube show at first, until they gain some ground, and then maybe they can stream somewhere else. And like I said, if they do announce some sort of a streaming deal, HBO Max or Paramount or some other platform, it could probably be available on there as well. So that's good. That's good for wrestling overall, and I think that's a really exciting purchase. To all the fans that are saying, oh, it's not WCW. No shit. Who's saying that it is? That's another big complaint I saw all week. Oh, Ring of Honor, it's not like they bought WCW or anything. Yeah, because WCW was already bought 20 years ago, and it's not for sale. That's why it's not WCW. We know. I'm not fucking stupid. It doesn't need to be pointed out to me that 1997 WCW might be a little bit better than 2018 Ring of Honor. No shit. We know that. We understand that. But you still have to keep wrestling moving, and I think it's good for companies with a lot of history and with a lot of footage available in their tape library to be able to be watched for the rest till the end of time. And I'm just glad that somebody has picked it up that is going to be able to distribute that content to us for as long as we want. So I see nothing but positive news coming out of that Tony Khan and Ring of Honor announcement. We'll talk more about Dynamite in just a second. I'm only going to talk about the Punk and MJF stuff. But next, I want to talk a little bit about Vince McMahon on the Pat McAfee show. Let me make sure that I've got no more super chats coming in. Oh, we got DJ Scandalous back in the house. What's up, man? You joined us, I believe, on Wednesday, perhaps. And you're right. They let way too many stars sit at home. And you think about when you got one during the Invasion angle, that is, if you just waited until the following year. Hell, I was at Survivor Series 2001. I watched the WCW and ECW Alliance die. And I was also at the very next show on Raw when Ric Flair returned to the company. 2 months later, No Way Out, the NWO came in. So if you would have just waited 10 months before you kicked off the Invasion angle instead of starting it in the summer of 2001, you could have had so much more WCW talent there available. And hell, maybe even Sting would have come in for that. Who knows? But that was such a mess, man. Okay. James Jones, KD at the beginning of Greg said, oh, okay, you're talking to somebody else. I thought maybe the MSG show was happening right now. Terry Allen Jr., thank you very much for that $2. The wrestlers look great. Camera movements new. I don't know what you're talking about there. Maybe Ring of Honor? I'm not sure. Vince isn't human, but he tried. I agree. He definitely isn't human. So, did you guys catch him on Thursday on Pat McAfee's show? I caught most of it. We don't have time to go. This could be its whole separate video on its own with all the stuff we could unpack here. But Vince, of course, was on the Pat McAfee show on Thursday. A lot of fans were speculating that this was going to be done to kick off some sort of a WrestleMania angle. It kind of was, because he did offer Pat McAfee a WrestleMania match, but it didn't happen the way we thought it would in terms of Vince McMahon himself actually getting in the ring and wrestling, which apparently were the reports earlier in the week. And a lot of people felt that it could be true because of the Netflix documentary coming up and all that stuff. But turns out that Vince probably will not be getting in the ring at WrestleMania. And we saw last night on Smackdown that, in fact, Austin Theory did come down and challenge McAfee, or tell McAfee that he would be his WrestleMania opponent, which we already knew, because if Vince tells McAfee he's going to have a WrestleMania match, we've seen everything Vince has been doing on Raw with Austin Theory. There's your match. The only one that might work other than that might be McAfee and Corey Graves one day, which I think would be really fun. But among the many things that Vince McMahon discussed on the Pat McAfee show, one of the big announcements that he made was regarding the Hall of Fame. And of course, The Undertaker is going to be headlining the 2022 class this year. I have been concerned about the Hall of Fame. I've mentioned this before, that I feel like in my mind, the glory days of what the Hall of Fame used to be, those days are over. In 2019, they changed up the set to that weird podium setup where Bret Hart was attacked. I hated that, hated the way it looked, hated all of it. Of course, the next year was a pandemic, no Hall of Fame at all. And the last year, we had a taped Thunderdome Hall of Fame, which was just shit. So now the Hall of Fame apparently is going to have fans there, and The Undertaker is going to be headlining, but they are doing the Hall of Fame as like a combined show with Smackdown, because now that WrestleMania is 2 nights and you got a takeover to squeeze in, you can't have the Hall of Fame on the night before WrestleMania anymore, or at least the Saturday night before WrestleMania, which to me is a big bummer, because I always look forward to that. That was one of my favorite parts of WrestleMania weekend, just the overall celebration of wrestling. I'd take off work, I'd kick my shoes off and watch the Hall of Fame, do a video on it, watch WrestleMania all the next day. I loved watching wrestlers that I grew up watching make speeches, go into the Hall of Fame, be honored, be remembered, even though the Hall of Fame is bullshit and it's just a bunch of guys sitting around a table deciding who they want to put in one year. It still is a very cool experience. I've always thought those years through like 2004 all the way up until just a few years ago, until everything shit the bed. So now they are probably going to have very short, condensed speeches. We saw that last year. We're never going to see a 30-minute long speech anymore, which sucks. And I understand for the talent who's got to do work WrestleMania the next day. They don't want to be there in the audience all dressed up, sitting there for hours and hours and hours. We've heard stories about how they fall asleep and they get really tired, and some of them have to leave early and whatnot. I get it, but to do it as a combined show with Smackdown, what does that mean? Right after Smackdown, they're just going to darken the ring, light up the stage, and people are just going to come out and do their speeches there, which means there will be no wrestlers in attendance. The McMahons won't be in the front row like it used to be back in the day. It just feels like it's going to be really, really shitty. And that bums me out because I miss what the Hall of Fame was. We have not seen any other Hall of Fame announcements as of yet, as it relates to the Hall of Fame. Not that I've seen. Have we seen any other names? I don't think so. So it could be possible that The Undertaker could be going into the Hall of Fame completely by himself. I did recommend that. I've recommended that before. I recommended it last year because I was like, it's pandemic and just do a one-man class. That's all you need. And since we haven't heard any new inductees this year, we could see just The Undertaker by himself, unless I'm completely forgetting somebody important, but none yet. So what kind of a Hall of Fame are we going to see? It's going to be a 1-hour show on USA or YouTube or Peacock, I think is what it is. But is there going to be a longer version that's going to be released later where you see these speeches intact? And this is just a condensed version, but I think it's going to be live. So yeah, I just don't like any of... Back in the day, didn't they used to run it live maybe on the WWE Network, and then after WrestleMania, they would run a 1-hour special on USA, or maybe Monday, the post-Mania Raw, or something like that, however they set it up. But all I know is the Hall of Fame that I loved, the Hall of Fame that I grew accustomed to watching every WrestleMania weekend, is never going to be that way again. And to me, that bums me out. But it is still going to be cool to see The Undertaker go into the Hall of Fame. And that was one of the things Vince McMahon talked about on Mcafee's show. And he confirmed what I believed was the right call all along. And that is Vince McMahon will in fact be inducting The Undertaker into the Hall of Fame. And he is absolutely the right guy to do it. Sorry, there's nobody else. Even if Paul Bearer was alive. No, Vince. Vince is the guy. Sure, you can make a case for Foley, Triple H, Shawn Michaels, Kane, Paul Bearer if he was still with us, and probably a lot of other opponents that Undertaker has a lot of history with. But there's only one guy that should induct him, and that's Vince McMahon. I think that he's the only guy Vince should have ever inducted. Austin did make sense because Austin did save the WWE from complete WCW annihilation, and his feud with Vince McMahon is probably going to go down as the best feud of all time, honestly. So I can understand Vince inducting Austin for that reason. But in terms of the longevity, you got to remember Austin's run was short. Came in late 95. He was gone by 03. It was 8 years, and only 3 or 4 of those was on top. So he had a quick run in the company, where Taker, came in 1990, had a 30-year career before finally retiring. And then his retirement ceremony had to happen in the Thunderdome, and that was terrible. And his career spanned so many decades, and the loyalty that he had for Vince McMahon. When everybody was jumping to WCW, he stayed through all of that. He developed a legacy for himself in the WWE that's going to be extremely difficult to duplicate. We're going to have some 30-year careers. We have them right now. Ray's been wrestling 30. Jericho's been wrestling 30. But The Undertaker as that same gimmick for that long. Yes, he spent time, in the territories. He spent time in WCW before coming in, but once he became The Undertaker, there was no looking back. And, he's got that Andre the Giant type of legacy to me, where he's got that type of a reputation, where this is talking about The Undertaker, the performer, the professional wrestler. I don't think I could really sit down and have a meal with The Undertaker and discuss things about the world that I'm going to have a whole lot of agreement with him on, if you know what I mean. But in terms of his character and his career in professional wrestling, there's never been anyone like him. And Vince McMahon should be eternally grateful for what The Undertaker gave not only to him, but to WWE and the legacy that Taker created for himself there. He is a legendary figure. He is a true comic book character come to life. And he had one of the most interesting careers in all of wrestling. Probably will go down as the best and greatest gimmick of all time, which is even more incredible because the gimmick on the surface is fucking stupid. The first time I saw The Undertaker, I'm like, what the hell? He was scary as hell, don't get me wrong, but to me, it was like, the Berserker or some of these other weird gimmicks that WWE did back in the day. This one, it just fit in them holes like one of them round pegs, you know what I mean? He just fit in there perfectly into that gimmick like a goddamn glove, and he was instantly terrifying. I mean, I was only 13 years old when he debuted, and I remember the first few matches he would have when he would do that look, before he like really grew his hair out and he had that pale look to him. It was scary, man. Like, he was a legitimately scary guy. So to see his career span how all those decades and all the changes he went through, even kind of dropping the dead man for a while and going into the American Badass, like Stone Cold's bringing up, and then going back into the dead man and having that long run, all of those world titles, spanning all those different decades. This guy beat Hulk Hogan for the title twice. He beat Steve Austin for the title. He's beat a lot of major names for championships. He's main evented WrestleMania. And I think there's a lot about him. You can make a case for The Undertaker to be the greatest of all time. I really, truly believe that because of his consistency and his longevity. He was never maybe quite as over as Austin and Hogan during their peaks, but man, he was close. And I don't think any wrestling fans really, truly booed him, even when he was a heel. And if The Undertaker was coming out, you weren't going to the popcorn stands or going to get a beer or going to take a piss. You were going to watch whatever he was going to do, regardless of what year it was, what decade it was, what show it was, what pay-per-view it was. He's been there through all of it. So I think Vince McMahon is the absolute right guy to induct him into the Hall of Fame because nobody's ever given Vince what The Undertaker gave him. And especially giving him that at so many critical times in Vince's life and career. At first, he was there when Hogan left. Then he was there through the steroid trial. Then he was there through WCW kicking their ass all the way until they turned the corner. And then when they were in control, Undertaker's legacy continued to roll. And I think the two of them had a great relationship, and Undertaker is synonymous with WWE. I mean, he's eclipsed anybody else's run, Hogan's, Andre's, anybody that's ever been in that company or has history with the company. He's eclipsed anything that they've ever done, in terms of working for Vince McMahon. So for that reason is why there was nobody else in my head. We talked about that when The Undertaker was announced for the Hall of Fame. I'm like, sure, it could be Taker, it could be Shawn or Triple H or Kane, but it's got to be Vince. It absolutely has to be Vince. So he revealed that on Pat McAfee's show. That was the right call. Now, among the other things he discussed, it got crazy here. So he was talking about everything. This was a full-blown, no-holds-barred interview. Vince is dropping F-bombs. He's cursing like crazy. And he did mention a couple of things when Pat grilled him about the fans and the audience. And, Vince always likes to say, we listen to our audience, which every time Vince McMahon or anybody in WWE management tells us that they listen to us, I shit out a jar of pickles. That's what I put on Twitter because it's so unbelievably, ridiculously fucking untrue. And it's a flat out lie. The last thing in the world they do is listen to the fans. And McAfee, I believe, kind of asked him about the fans on social media. And Vince is like, I don't listen to the Twitter users and the angry podcasters. I don't listen to any of them. I don't listen to the internet. And then McAfee was like, well, because Vince says that they have a focus group every week in person, the audience, they're attending their shows. So McAfee was like, okay, fine. Well, what did you do during the Thunderdome? Did you listen to the social media audience then? And Vince kind of dodged the question a little bit, saying on one hand that he doesn't listen to the internet, but he also listens to the fans. I'm like, well, which is it? The internet is your audience. Everybody watches wrestling on the internet. Even casual fans are internet fans. There is no such thing as the IWC. I've dropped that term long ago because it doesn't really exist. Everybody's on the internet, even people who aren't psychos like us and follow every single little tidbit about pro wrestling that you can. Even they are on the internet looking at shit. So his entire audience is the internet, every bit of them. So I think that every time he likes to say that they try to let the audience guide them, I don't know who the fuck he's trying to convince here. But the more he spoke, the more you really realize that Vince McMahon is just definitely in his own world. He has certain things that he believes, he has certain ways that he thinks, and he just runs his company based on that. And that becomes more apparent with each year when we see the most ridiculous shit on TV, that the only people in the world who probably find this entertaining are Vince McMahon and Bruce Pritchard. That's pretty apparent. And it became even more apparent the more Vince spoke. But Pat McAfee, to his credit, he brought up by name AEW, Ring of Honor, TNA, a lot of Vince's competition to get his feelings on that, which I appreciated. Vince talked a lot about his personal life, talked about his crazy workout schedule. Apparently he works out like from 1 to 3 a.m., gets like 4 hours of sleep. Now, this is stuff we've always heard about Vince. We knew he was some sort of an android or alien, but you would assume once you get into your mid-70s or later, you might slow down a bit. But the fact that this dude is doing squats at 2 o'clock in the morning, and then he gets up at 5 or 6 or whatever to hop on a plane or to go to the office or whatever he does, he seems to be showing zero signs of slowing down at all. And it makes you wonder when, even McAfee asked him about succession and, do you have an idea of what's going to happen if you ever have to step away or when you're gone or what the future is of WWE in 50 years? And Vince just really claims that he's not thinking that way, which I have a hard time believing because now, like he said himself, WWE is a publicly traded company. Your stockholders, your shareholders, your board of directors, guys like that are going to have a succession plan in place. So when he says there's nothing to even think about, he's full of shit. There's definitely something to think about. Vince could die tomorrow, and I'm sure there is a plan in place if that happens, regardless of whether you want to believe you're going to die or not. You still are. So there's got to be some sort of plans there for one day when that happens. But he did talk about taking the company public and how that really changed everything. It made him a better businessman, and it really made him able to separate business from personal reasons, because once the company's public, your priorities are so much different now, and it's all about the happiness of the shareholders and keeping the profits at a certain place. And it was able to allow him to really draw that line between business and personal, to where even with his own family members, he talked about how hard he is on his family members, how he expects more from them, and even dropped some hints about that family members have disappointed him. You can't help but think he's talking about Triple H, and he just really wasn't happy with Triple H's vision in NXT, which is crazy because Triple H's vision in NXT was fantastic. He was a great person to have in charge there. The talent really seemed to enjoy learning and working with him along with Shawn Michaels, and for WWE to undo that, to undo Triple H's baby, and then for Vince to throw shade, my God, this man is fucking out of his mind. And you got to give him credit for that, though, to be able to really section out those parts of his life and his brain to where, he doesn't feel bad about shedding dead. He kind of referred to all of the released talent over the last 2 years as dead weight. And that's also a complete lie, because it wasn't dead weight. It was a change in your business philosophy. You went from hoarding talent to not hoarding talent. It has nothing to do with dead weight. These are people that you signed, you wanted. Some of them you just let go right away. So they weren't dead weight. You brought them on and changed your mind. That's all it is. So I was happy that McAfee brought stuff like that up, bringing up the releases. He brought up Saudi Arabia. He brought up backstage guys like Kevin Dunn, like Bruce Pritchard, and Michael Cole, who Vince McMahon says is a terrible human being after he said everybody else was a wonderful human being. He probably referred to people as a wonderful human being about a half a dozen times, but when it came to Michael Cole, he's a terrible human being. So I absolutely loved that rib. It was very entertaining. It was very compelling. Like I said, we can't go through all of this here, but a lot of what Vince said made me roll my eyes because I knew he's full of shit. A lot of what Vince said made me nod because I'm like, that makes a lot of sense because that's how Vince McMahon thinks. And despite the fact that I've probably heard 80% of what's ever come out of Vince McMahon's mouth in a public setting, I've never come away from any of those experiences thinking that he wasn't a very, very odd person. And we've always known that about Vince. So I wasn't expecting to get that much information out of this interview, but I got a lot more than I was expecting. And it was kind of nice to see Vince McMahon in this type of setting at this age in 2022, because it's about as real, it's about as authentic of a Vince as we are going to get because of, just the casual setting and the atmosphere that he was in. And Pat McAfee does a great job. This guy is just a ball of energy. He's always standing up. He's always fidgety, pounding his liquid death. I don't know where he even gets this energy either. I understand why Vince McMahon likes him. It makes a lot of sense. But it was really interesting interview. So if you haven't seen it, go check it out. There's transcripts everywhere that you could read this if you don't want to actually listen to it. But it was a really, really interesting watch, and I enjoyed it. And one of the big things that Vince revealed in this interview with Pat McAfee is that he went on to basically compliment McAfee on what a great job he does. McAfee says that Vince isn't really in his ear. We've always heard those horror stories about Vince McMahon being in the ear of the commentators on headset, giving him shit, yelling at him, screaming at him, or whatnot. And McAfee says that Vince just lets him roll with it. And that's good, because McAfee is the type of announcer. He's so entertaining. There's no way he thinks a lot of this out. This is a lot of this stuff is just his natural energy. And if you start putting a governor on that or a filter on that, that's just going to kill it. So at least Vince understands a guy like McAfee, you got to just let him go. If he fucks up or says something he's not supposed to, then you might have to have a come to Jesus meeting backstage or something. But overall, I'm glad that Vince kind of takes the handcuffs off of McAfee and lets him do whatever he wants. And he told him that because of the job he does, he wants to offer him a spot at WrestleMania, to have an actual match at WrestleMania. So that's what we came away from the interview learning, is that McAfee would be facing someone, we just wouldn't know who. And of course, we'll talk about Smackdown in a second. And that person is in fact going to be Austin Theory, which none of us really doubted. He's the only guy it can really be. Although I would love for one day McAfee and Corey Graves to have a program or a feud. Graves has been cleared to wrestle for quite some time, and he has been talking a little bit of shit to Pat McAfee on social media, even saying like, dudes, I was forced to retire. It's not like I forgot how to fight or anything. I think Pat McAfee would eat Corey Graves for lunch in a fucking shoot fight. I don't even think it would be a contest, but if they wrestled in a wrestling match, I think Pat McAfee would beat him there too. I like Pat McAfee better as a human, better as a commentator, and better as a wrestler than Corey Graves. I'm sorry. And if you think I'm going to watch even 10 seconds of that Corey and Carmella show, you are crazier than you look. He is just not a fan. I'm just not a fan of his very much for some reason. So anywho, I think maybe McAfee and Graves down the road could happen, but at least at WrestleMania, we're going to get McAfee and Austin Theory. And I'm sure, even though that Vince McMahon is not physically getting in the ring, he's still going to have an impact on this match somehow, you'd have to think. So he might come out to ringside, he might interfere, and it might make some pretty interesting footage for that documentary that he's got coming out on Netflix next year or later this year or whenever it is. So check out the Vince interview with McAfee if you can. It's awesome. Like I said, we talked all about Cody earlier on. He could show up tonight at the MSG show. It was Cassidy Haynes who was reporting that the conversations with WWE has fizzled out, and there is some new hope bubbling up in AEW that he could maybe return, especially now that Ring of Honor is involved. Meltzer contradicted that and said that Cody's name is still on all the internal creative lists for WWE in the event that he signs. Creative has been instructed to have something planned for him. So we'll see what happens. We might find out the answer as early as tonight, maybe in just the next hour or two, what the latest with Cody is. But like I said, eyeball that MSG show. It's going to be something. Last night's Smackdown, I want to run through this a little bit. I was going to talk a little bit about Keith Lee on Talk is Jericho, but I didn't listen to it. I grabbed a transcript off of Fightful.com, and there were some interesting tidbits in there, specifically his final days in WWE and the Bearcat stuff. We remember they changed him to Bearcat Lee, and he basically laid out and outlined the reason why he had such a problem with it is that WWE, it doesn't seem like they understand the differences between an actual character and like personality traits and shit like that. Like, they never gave him an answer what Bearcat was supposed to be. And he goes, I was just asking questions. You tell me to go out and do something, I'm going to do whatever you want me to do. You're my boss. I work for you. I do what you say. But how am I supposed to go out and know how to act and how to be a character that you're not explaining to me what it is? Because Keith Lee is right. One thing about Keith Lee that we can all agree on, fans like Keith Lee for Keith Lee. He's not really much of a character. He's one of the wrestlers more than anybody that you really get behind because of who he is. He goes by his real name. The way he speaks and the cadence in his promos is a little bit animated. He has admitted that, but it is him. It is his personality. There's really nothing you need to mess with there. This is a big guy that fans enjoy watching wrestle, so go out there and put him in matches and let him kick ass. WWE kept trying to reinvent him when there was nothing to reinvent. There was nothing to get. There was nothing to understand. You know, and WWE, sometimes they fumble up what should be the easiest things to figure out, and that's what makes this company so goddamn terrifying, is that the very simplest, most basic of things, they fuck up. And that is, and when Lee was chronicling these discussions and what the management was telling him and what they wanted him to act like and what they wanted the Bearcat persona to be, he wasn't getting any concrete answers. He's like, I don't know what you guys want from me. You know, normally if it was myself, I can figure out my own shit because I know who I am. You're asking me to be somebody else now, and you're giving me do's and don'ts of things to do. None of this makes any sense. So it sounds like it was a huge headache for him. He said he felt tested. He felt like what they were doing to him was jerking him around some sort of a test. And he was just over of himself. There wasn't really much to do with him other than that. Fans liked him. Fans reacted to him. And all of that was pretty interesting to read. So I still have to go back. Maybe I'll probably listen to it in the car or something and actually listen to this interview. But in terms of what I read, it's just one of those head-shaking things, because I'm sure on WWE's end, he was difficult to work with or whatnot, like they say about everybody. It's almost getting comical now every time they bring that up. It's like, oh, come on. So Keith Lee was done seriously wrong. And if you're a wrestling company and you can't figure out anything literally to do with Keith Lee, maybe he ain't the problem. Anyway, moving on to SmackDown now. Like I said, last night's SmackDown, guess what? Didn't suck. It wasn't bad at all. It was a pretty loaded SmackDown. Now, it still had WWE elements in it. It still had all the same stupid WWE shit we see in every show, but we had some good matches. We had some entertaining things go down, and we had more matches set up for WrestleMania. You would hope, as a fan, every Raw and every SmackDown between now and WrestleMania won't suck. Fingers crossed. So we open up the show with an Intercontinental title match, Sami Zayn defending against Ricochet. Now, Sami just won the IC title a couple of weeks ago from Shinsuke Nakamura. So not only did WWE remember they have an Intercontinental title, they also remembered that Ricochet was on the roster, and they did all of this in the matter of 2 weeks, which is great. So Sami wins the IC title. He has his little celebration thing last week where I think he beats the hell out of Knoxville. Now he's defending against Ricochet. Few minutes into the match, jackass music plays. Knoxville just comes out to the stage, and of course, Sami, the professional that he is, gets distracted by this, turns around. Ricochet comes in from behind, hits him with basically like a West Coast pop, Rana, to pin him for the upset win, and wins the Intercontinental title. Huge pop for Ricochet. I love Ricochet. He's a guy that I was hoping would just get released so he could go to AEW, but now he's the Intercontinental champion, and that's awesome and everything, and I hope that WWE continues to utilize him in championship matches or bigger angles, or at least keep him on the top half of the card. I just don't trust them to do that, so I'm hoping that this is not a quick run for him, and then Sami Zayn wins the IC title back and still defends it against Knoxville, but most fans, I think, agree that that's not going to be the case. Most fans believe that Sami Zayn and Knoxville don't need the Intercontinental title, which they're right, but that doesn't mean WWE is going to see it that way. I wasn't watching SmackDown last night. I just saw the result, so I tweeted, I'm like, shit, does that mean Sami is going to win the IC title back? And everybody's like, oh, Greg, Sami and Knoxville doesn't need the title. I'm like, oh, I know. I get it. Trust me, but what we think and what we know sometimes is the exact opposite of what WWE does. I'm not thinking about what we think makes sense, because if it makes sense to us, it's probably not going to make sense to them. So I still think there is a chance that Sami could regain the title somehow between now and WrestleMania, but I'd rather see Sami go into Mania just to face Knoxville on his own and have Ricochet defend the title, or maybe do that big multi-man ladder match for the IC title that many fans are talking about. Hell, you could do the IC and the US and unify them too and bring back the European. That would be fucking fun. We'll have to see. So anyway, Ricochet's a new champ. He celebrates with Knoxville. Fans loved to see that. I hope Ricochet has a healthy run. I really do, but I don't think his run will last any further than WrestleMania. I mean, I'd be surprised if Ricochet went into WrestleMania to defend the Intercontinental title in like a 5-person ladder match and retained. I mean, I'd love it. I just don't see it. So we'll see how long Ricochet's run lasts, but it's great for him. He is long overdue for some singles gold in WWE. He has won U.S. title, I believe, right? And he was the North American champion in NXT, but it seems like he's been largely invisible for the last year or two, and that's stupid. So after the match, Sami Zayn backstage is furious, and he officially challenges Johnny Knoxville to a match at WrestleMania, and it's now been confirmed, and that match is set. So I think we had a total of 3 matches announced for Mania, maybe 2, and the other one we already knew about. And after that, after Sami loses the title, Austin Theory comes out. This is a Raw guy showing up on SmackDown. He's on the mic. He is talking as he's coming down the ramp, talking to Pat McAfee, saying that Vince McMahon set him up and that Vince McMahon is always one step ahead of everybody and that Vince McMahon doesn't even like Pat McAfee. And everything that Vince does, he does for a reason, and he set you up so he could give me an opportunity and that I will be your WrestleMania opponent, and jumps out of the ring, gets in McAfee's face, telling him he's going to be his opponent, and then slaps the headset right off of McAfee's head. McAfee was pretty pissed, even gave a little bit of shit to Michael Cole for a minute there, but then calmed down and was able to continue to call the show. So no surprise there. Theory and Pat McAfee, and honestly, as crazy as it sounds, I think that could be a sleeper match. I mean, Pat McAfee doesn't have a ton of experience, and Austin Theory's incredibly young, but Austin Theory's got a lot of potential, and WWE and Vince McMahon obviously see big things in him. I don't even know who's going to win this. I mean, do you think, Pat, this will lead to McAfee wrestling more regularly, or he's just going to be a guy to come in and wrestle occasionally? But it feels like a lot of this is WWE rewarding Pat's wonderful work on commentary with a WrestleMania match and a WrestleMania match payday. A few years ago, there was that story about how Michael Cole almost got him fired for wearing shorts. When I read and heard McAfee tell that story, my blood was boiling, as if Michael Cole doesn't piss me off enough in his condescending fucking tone. And let me tell you, you people probably agree who just live in life and in society in general, short man syndrome is a real thing that exists in life for sure. He's got it. You can probably find people around the wrestling world that have it too. So I never liked that about Michael Cole. But then when I saw the relationship that Michael Cole developed with McAfee on SmackDown, it seems like that's all water under the bridge and not a big deal at all. But that whole story was so crazy. I don't know how Pat McAfee did not knock him out. You know, to be talked to that degree, especially when you're somebody that's not like relying on the job and all of that. McAfee's a former football player. He's just doing this for fun. It's not like it's his livelihood and he's going to be homeless if he gets fired. So I would have just broke his fucking jaw. But the fact that there was kind of a callback to that last night and McAfee kind of yelled at Cole a little bit, I like that a lot. So we'll see with McAfee at WrestleMania if he does any match calling in addition to his wrestling. I'm assuming he will on night 1. I don't even know where that match is scheduled, night 1 or 2. I forgot, but maybe on the other night he'll do some match calling and then he'll wrestle on the other one. I don't know. But I think that match could be a lot more exciting than we might think it will be in our heads, because McAfee had great matches with Adam Cole. So I think he can do some great things with Austin Theory as well. Should be fun. A couple of other random matches here on SmackDown. Naomi defeated Carmella with a split-legged moonsault. They had Sasha Banks at ringside for that, and it looks like they're setting up Sasha, Naomi against Carmella and Zelina at WrestleMania. They showed Natalya watching the monitor backstage, so somebody said that she might team up with Aaliyah, who beat her and set all those records, or set the 317 record, or whatever it is. So you could see a 3-way, a triple threat tag for the women's titles at Mania with Naomi, Sasha, Carmella, Zelina, and Natalya and Aaliyah, possibly. But at least for last night, it was Naomi, Carmella. Naomi won. Drew McIntyre claymored Jinder Mahal and beat him in a match. Roman Reigns had a pretty good promo as well, got real fiery. He was talking about the MSG show tonight, and he was also talking about Brock and beating him at WrestleMania, and that Brock will have no choice when there's millions of dollars in pyro exploding and Roman is celebrating. Brock is going to have no choice but to acknowledge him. And then he starts saying, me, you have to acknowledge me, and just gets fired up as hell. I really liked seeing that extra little bit of energy in Roman Reigns last night. Every time I look at him in that setting, with his demeanor, with his character, with his voice, I'm going to smash him. I'm going to smash everybody. Heyman with him, the Usos in the background. What a far cry that is from who Roman was 4 years ago. You know what I mean? When you think about Roman pre-pandemic and you think about Roman now, they don't even seem like the same guy. That's why I don't care about this Brock-Roman match, because everybody's like, we've seen it 7 times. I'm like, we've seen lots of matches 7 times. We've seen 7 matches in the span of 3 months sometimes between the same guys. So who cares if they have 7 matches in 7 years? I don't, especially when these characters are so vastly different than what they used to be. It feels like a brand new match anyway. So once again, Greg is in the minority of fans that does not have a problem whatsoever with Roman and Brock main eventing WrestleMania. Not only do I not have a problem with it, I like it. And if you don't agree with me, that sucks for you. After that, we had the Usos defending the Smackdown Tag Team titles against the Viking Raiders. This is the match I guess they tried to do in Saudi Arabia a couple weeks back. Usos picked up the win and retained. Then we had Big E taking on Sheamus. Big E and Kofi, I guess, have got this like ATV toy out there, like a real ATV, but this ATV is being sold as a toy. I think it's available on WWE Shop right now for some reason. So Big E and Kofi have an ATV. Sheamus and Ridge Holland steal it, and they take it outside, and they beat it to shit with sledgehammers. Okay, so we're probably going to get some sort of either a multi-man match for the IC or maybe some sort of tag match with these guys in the upcoming weeks on SmackDown before the IC match at WrestleMania. I don't know, but they're using an ATV getting vandalized as a way to further this feud, and I just don't care about that. And in the main event, we had Ronda Rousey taking on Sonya Deville. Charlotte hung around on commentary for this match. Ronda made pretty quick work out of Sonya, tapping her out with the armbar. Charlotte attempted to get in the ring and take on Ronda, and she got put in an ankle lock for her efforts. So Ronda looked pretty strong there. The two of them will be main eventing night 1, and I don't know, man. I mean, is Ronda really a given to win this thing? I don't know. I don't feel like the fans are as into Ronda. I'm not, as I was last time. I loved her last time, but this time around something is missing, and I would actually be okay if Charlotte won at WrestleMania. It's going to be tough for the fans to decide that, because I feel like they don't like either one of these women, but somebody's going to have to win. And I know if Charlotte wins, they're always putting Charlotte over. But then if Ronda wins, they're like, I should put a part-timer over. Well, I don't know. They're going to find some reason to bitch regardless. So that should be interesting from a fan standpoint. I was in the audience at Survivor Series a few years back when these women wrestled the first time, and that match was badass. So we'll see what they can recreate at WrestleMania. And like I said, the fact that they put both of those women's matches on night 1 is intriguing and does leave the door open. Maybe WWE doesn't even know what they're going to do yet. They've advertised Roman and Brock as a unification, but reports are now is that after WrestleMania, there will still continue to be 2 champions. So why the fuck is it called a unification? But if they are going to go through with a unification, then sticking both women's matches on the same night does open the door for you to run some kind of an angle to unify them there too. So I don't know. We'll keep our eye on it. Raw this past week. I want to give a few props to Raw this past week as well, because I thought it was a good show. By the way, Raw pulled in a 1.75 rating with a 0.47 share in that prestigious demo. We saw Finn Balor crowned as the new U.S. champion. That was very surprising. Also, Bianca Belair and Becky, I think, turned up the heat a bit in their program, with Bianca whipping Becky with the hair and leaving those welts all over her stomach. I thought for sure that they piped in a sound effect when Bianca hit Becky, because it was so loud until you start seeing all of the fan footage of the spot on social media. I'm like, they didn't pipe anything in. That was a legit shot, and those were legit marks all over Becky. And I really liked that because I've been saying ever since Bianca Belair came up to the main roster that at some point in the future, she's going to find herself in an angle where some heel is going to cut that hair off. And I think we could be seeing that between now and WrestleMania. I think a perfect place to cut the hair off is the Go Home Raw. Go Home Raw to WrestleMania. I mean, a lot of ways that would completely give away the ending. But look at the match placement. You realize what WWE's setting up here? They're setting up for the exact same finish we got at SummerSlam, only reversed. I'd be fine with that. You have Becky cut off the hair of Bianca Belair on the Go Home Raw, and you got a Bianca Belair coming out at WrestleMania a little bit more pissed off than she normally is. Now you got an angry, infuriated Bianca Belair. I'd like to see them turn up the heat just a bit. And maybe she just decks Becky the minute the bell rings, lifts her right up, boom, KOD, wins the title. I'm sure there's going to be some fans that, oh, that was too quick. But, a lot of ways it fits the story because Becky did that to Bianca, but she caught her off guard. This time Bianca beats her straight up because Becky was stupid enough to give her motivation to beat her in 5 seconds. You chop the hair off of Bianca Belair, she damn sure better beat Becky Lynch in 5 seconds at WrestleMania, especially if you do it in the go-home show. So basically, based on the fact that they've put Becky and Bianca on night one, that tells me they have really set themselves up for a quick finish like that. Because if it was on night two, it would kind of be on its own little island there, and people would probably maybe even remember it a lot deeper. And if she won there, they would be like, oh, what a jip. We didn't even get a full match out of them. But if you do that early on in night one, maybe they even open the show or something. I don't know. Do that a couple of matches into night one. Bianca wins the match, wins the championship in record time. I think that would be great for Bianca. She'd have shorter hair. She might have a different look, and she might even have her different attitude now. And then you'll probably run Bianca and Becky back one more time at Backlash or WrestleMania Backlash or whatever the hell the next pay-per-view is. And you do one more rubber match there with Bianca going over legit and maybe a little bit longer of a match, maybe even a gimmick match. I don't know when Hell in the Cell is or anything like that, but that might be a good place to blow those two off. Or, just have a last woman standing or some sort of shit at the next pay-per-view to finally end that whole deal and let Bianca run with the title again until SummerSlam or whatever. So that's what I would do. I think the hair whip could set up the hair being chopped off, which then could set up a Bianca squash of Becky Lynch at WrestleMania. Some fans aren't going to like that. Becky held the title so long just to be squashed. Yeah, get over it. That's exactly what happened. Cry some more. Anyway, so Raw, I thought was pretty good between the new U.S. champion crowned in Finn Balor, then the Bianca and Becky stuff, and the final segment where Edge's WrestleMania challenge was answered by AJ Styles, which we all expected. Nobody really expected it to be anybody other than AJ. But what we didn't expect is for them to swerve us and have Edge just go nuts. Basically, they kind of did a double turn right here in the match because AJ was a heel prior to Monday, correct? He comes out, answers the challenge, and then Edge winds up killing him with the chair and splattering his brains and really acting like a scary individual. So that's now changed the dynamic of this match. The dynamic is not the way we thought it would be. I just thought it would be one wrestling icon against another, giving us a dream match that we've never seen. Little did I know, these boys ain't playing games. These guys are pros. They are not fucking around. And this should be fun. Yeah, it came out of nowhere, but it's better than what they probably were going to do. At least now on Monday, Edge can explain why he did what he did. And my early pick for this match at WrestleMania is AJ. I think AJ is going to win. I think Edge would love to put him over. So we'll see. That should be pretty interesting at WrestleMania. And this coming Monday, like I said, I'll probably come up and do a review on Monday. Edge is going to explain why he did that. And we have that very curious Jerry Lawler appearance, which I speculated earlier on is so random, so out of left field. It makes me wonder if Lawler's going to be in the ring and then like Owens and Seth are going to come out and fuck with him. And then Austin will come out and make the save. Maybe Austin and Goldberg both come out to make the save for Jerry Lawler. And it's Austin Goldberg against Seth and Owens at WrestleMania. Maybe. That's just one idea. And speaking of WrestleMania, here's what we got for the WrestleMania card. I didn't write down night one or night two. These are just the matches I have listed so far. Sami Zayn versus Johnny Knoxville, Austin Theory versus Pat McAfee, Drew McIntyre taking on Baron Corbin, the Mysterios taking on The Miz and Logan Paul, Zelina and Carmella taking on Sasha and Naomi for the tag team titles. Like I said, they might insert Natalya and Aaliyah to that if you were to be believed, because Natalya was looking at that tag match last night. We also have AJ Styles versus Edge, Bianca Belair versus Becky Lynch, Charlotte versus Ronda Rousey, and Brock Lesnar versus Roman Reigns. We're probably going to get the Steve Austin match added to this, and potentially a few more, but right now there's definitely room for a handful more matches to be added to both of these nights. So that's what we got for WrestleMania right now. And now that just leaves us with AEW. We got to talk Revolution, and we've got to talk Rampage. Now, I want to discuss Dynamite real quick. We were up here watching that live on Wednesday. That segment, by the way, Dynamite this week did fall and dip under a million viewers, 966,000 with a 0.35 in the share. The best part of the show easily was the MJF Punk segment, where MJF came out and hugged Punk only to low blow him. They did the swerve here. I wasn't sure how that was going to work at Revolution if these guys are forced to have a match with each other, but now Punk feels a little bit differently about MJF, but it's also a stip match, a dog collar match that's supposed to be brutal. How are you supposed to beat the shit out of this guy that was just crying on your shoulder a week ago? So I was kind of curious what direction they were going to go and when they were going to wait to reveal that MJF was fucking with all of us, but they did it right away on Wednesday. The only thing I didn't like about it is that I kind of feel like Punk should have had a cup. Like he should have seen this coming from MJF, because everybody else did. I thought it was going to be a double swerve. I thought it was going to be Punk expecting MJF to turn on him, and he was going to be ready for it. But he wasn't. He ate the nut shot. He went down. They brought out the dog collar. He was busted open, bleeding buckets out there. He's probably got several stitches, which means those stitches should be pretty easy to open up tomorrow. So we'll probably get a lot of blood in that dog collar match tomorrow. And they hung him from the rope, and MJF grabbed him by the face. It was fucking beautiful, and it really upped the heat. And now it makes this match extremely interesting tomorrow. So that's the one I'm probably looking forward to the most. So Dynamite was fun on Wednesday, specifically that segment. Last night on Rampage was pretty damn good as well. Now, ahead of the show, Tony Khan announced that Paige Vanzant has been signed by All Elite Wrestling, and apparently he's going to bring the contract. Did I hear this right? Help me if I'm missing something. He's going to bring the contract to Revolution for Paige Vanzant to sign. So that makes me think there's going to be some sort of an angle going on there. And do you think it could be Brandy? Because they were about to set up some sort of a match or program between them or something. Do you think it's possible that Cody could go to WWE and Brandy could stay in AEW? It is possible. Maybe. There's plenty of other husbands and wives and boyfriends and girlfriends that are separated between these two companies. Maybe that could be the case. So we'll see if they're going to bring Vanzant to Revolution to do this. Makes me think something's going to happen there. I don't know. But I don't know much about her other than she's somebody with real fighting experience who's extremely hot. That's all I really know about her. So hopefully that translates into her being a good professional wrestler, because she's got the look for sure. She's got the combat experience. You know, if she can translate that into wrestling, she could potentially be big for AEW and somebody that's going to really help that women's division. So let's hope for the best there. Andrade and Sammy and Darby Allin last night had one hell of a fucking TNT title match, triple threat. This thing was insane, and the spots in this were nuts. I really liked the fact that they kept Andrade strong. I didn't really love that he dropped that match to Sammy last week, which I think was kind of clean. So now he's got another shot at it, but this time they booked him to look like a monster, and he was beating the piss out of Sammy and Darby by himself. The two of them really had to work together to try to neutralize Andrade. So I'm really glad that they kept him looking very strong. The spots in this match were incredible. Too many to list, but the two that sticks out was the big coast to coast from Sammy onto, I believe, Andrade, and that tower suplex thing. So I guess it was Andrade had Sammy in powerbomb position. Sammy had Darby in suplex position in the corner, and they basically got double powerbombed by Andrade. That was awesome. Now, the finish was also awesome. So you've got Sammy Guevara hitting an amazing-looking GTS GTH on to Andrade, who eats that. Then he falls. Darby then gets up on the top rope, hits Andrade with a coffin drop right after the GTH. So they literally had to hit Andrade with everything here. He goes to cover Andrade, and then Sammy comes off the top, lands on Darby with a swanton bomb. Darby, of course, rolls away, and then Sammy dives on Andrade for the win. Somebody pointed out that's the exact same finish of Armageddon 2008 when Jeff Hardy won the WWE title. I think Triple H and somebody else was in that match, right? So that's a little tease there that Jeff Hardy is going to be showing up any day. I don't have my Jeff Hardy no compete counter handy. How many days we got left? Can he show up tomorrow? If he can, I think he will. So, or he'll show up on Wednesday if his no compete is officially now over. I just don't know the date on that. One of you guys probably do. So I really liked that little callback to Armageddon, and maybe another little tease, a subtle tease, that Jeff Hardy is, in fact, on his way into the company real soon. We had a big surprise, another debut, this time in the Death Triangle. So we've got Pac, Penta, and Alex Abrahantes in the ring. And Alex just looked like a weirdo dressed in that Halloween costume. It just looked weird to me. So he calls out House of Black, says that the Death Triangle is down a man, and then House of Black comes up on the screen. They say a few words. Of course, Buddy Matthews just debuted last week. He's now in Death Triangle with Malachi and Brody. And they appear on the Tron, say a few words, lights go out, and then they are in the ring with Death Triangle. And that's when Alex gets on the mic and says, I said we were down a man, but we got a replacement, or whatever he says. And he introduces Eric Redbeard. So Redbeard comes out and they annihilate everybody. Basically, they just annihilate the security team. House of Black gets out of there, and Death Triangle wipes out the security team. And then I believe, that was after. Shit, I had notes written in the wrong spot in the Keith Lee match. I'm like, when did Hobbs come out there? House of Black. I thought I had Will Hobbs' name written down, but it's H-O-B that I meant House of Black. House of Black retreats, and that's when the Death Triangle wipes out all of those security guards. But Hobbs is in the next segment in the Keith Lee match. Keith Lee takes on J.D. Drake. Always good to see Keith Lee in a ring, winning matches. Gets a win again over J.D. in a match that I think went just a little bit too long. Peter Avalon and Cesar Bononi come in to attack, and they get wiped out. Starks and Hobbs, I believe, are on commentary for this match, and they start approaching the ring until Orange Cassidy, another member in that Face of Revolution ladder match, comes out to kind of even the odds, and things don't escalate from there. Then we get a video promo from CM Punk from last Wednesday after his attack from MJF. He's in the trainer's room. He's covered in blood, and he cuts a very passionate and intense promo on MJF and says that he's going to beat him so badly on Sunday that his mom's not even going to recognize him. So that should be good. You know that match is going to be violent and bloody and awesome. I can't wait. Serena Deeb had another rookie challenge. I didn't catch the girl's name. She faced Layla something. Layla tries to run away from her at first and just try to avoid her for the 5 minutes. Serena eventually catches up to her, taps her out in a matter of seconds, and we all knew that this rookie challenge was going to lead to somebody either debuting or returning. And Hikaru Shida returned to AEW last night on Rampage. Music hits. She comes down there, a little bit of a different look, some face paint, and she's got a kendo stick, and she wears Serena Deeb's ass out. And those two have had some great matches in their entire saga, and I can't wait for that one to happen. I bet you they're going to book that. I don't think they've added that to tomorrow, but I would expect that match to be on TV almost immediately, maybe this Wednesday on Dynamite or this Friday on Rampage. But that was good stuff. And then in the main event, we had our final spot for the Face of Revolution ladder match qualifier. Christian Cage defeating Ethan Page with the kill switch, and Jurassic Express comes out to celebrate with Christian after the fact, and he's the final entrant into that ladder match tomorrow night at Revolution. Which brings us now to Revolution predictions. Let's roll through this because I got to sign off here in about 15 minutes, and I might have a couple of super chats to answer. Who is this guy? I didn't watch Smackdown. I'm not a real fan. Are you sure you're a real person? Oh, my God. People are such losers. My God. Anywho, let's just get him out of here. All right, he is gone. Right on. Who is next? I got all the other supers. No, I did not. Stone Cold. Thank you for the $5. Before we get into the predictions, I want to bust out these super chats. McAfee was right when he mentioned how Vince gets little to no credit when something cool or great happens. I kind of agree with. When something cool or great happens. Yeah, I guess so, maybe, but they balance it out with so much bad shit. Yeah, I mean, you should get credit if you do something good, and you should get shit on if you do something bad. That's the way I feel. So, yeah, it's kind of right. Stone Cold, you have $5 in earlier as well. Love Taker, but American Badass is still your favorite. A lot of people say that. I think the American Badass version of The Undertaker was a lot of fans' favorites, especially the generation below me. Zane G, thank you for $5 from you as well. Rumors around that the Steiner brothers will be in the Hall of Fame. I love it. Would love for them to induct the Steiners. I think they're both kind of on good terms. Braun Breaker is there, and Scotty is just Scotty. So, yeah, Steiners this year, I'd be all for that, and they definitely deserve it. Victor, $2 from you earlier on that I missed. What if WWE started doing the Hall of Fame at SummerSlam? That's a great idea. I think WrestleMania is the better place for it, but if WrestleMania is 2 nights and there's so much other shit going on, you got to find a better weekend. Putting it on the number 2 pay-per-view is fine with me. So, yeah, Hall of Fame at SummerSlam, I'd be into that, totally. Terry Allen, thank you for $2 as well earlier on. WWE 2K22, up, down, down. Okay. I don't play modern video games, but I don't know if that's a reference to Xavier Woods' channel or the Konami code or what. You're probably that was your earlier comment. Wrestlers look great, camera movements. You're talking about WWE 2K22. Gotcha. Now it all makes sense. Thank you for that. Let me see. Is that everybody there before we get into our stuff? Yeah, let's get into AEW Revolution predictions. Let's start with the buy-in. Hook versus QT Marshall. Come on now. HOOK will be winning that one. Layla Hirsch taking on Chris Statlander. Now, Statlander's kind of the babyface in this, although she's been bringing up the orphanage of Layla Hirsch and how her parents gave her up and all that. Chris is kind of being an asshole. I'm going to go Layla Hirsch just for fun. I don't know who's going to win this match, but let's pick Layla. And, of course, we got the 6-man that was set up just last night on Rampage. House of Black taking on Death Triangle. You know, we just had Redbeard debut for Death Triangle, but we also had Buddy Matthews debut for House of Black. So I want House of Black to win, so I'm going to predict them to win that. Main card, we've got AHFO, Andrade, Matt Hardy, and Isaiah Cassidy taking on Darby, Sting, and Sammy Guevara in a 6-man tornado match. Sammy, Sting, Darby for sure, unless Sammy and Darby have dissension. I don't believe they had a full-blown handshake last night. Jeff Hardy could show up here as well. Lots of stuff could go down, so I could be wrong on this prediction, but if Sting's going to wrestle, I want Sting to win. So let's go Sammy, Darby, Sting to win that one. Jon Moxley and Bryan Danielson could go either way there. I feel like this saga is not going to be over regardless of who wins tomorrow. So for the purposes of this match, let's go Moxley. Let's go Jon Moxley tomorrow. I don't know why. Let's just predict him. I think after that, though, it could be like a shady finish where he kind of just wins sneakily, or maybe he does something behind the referee's back and Danielson's like, okay, you got the win from me, but you got the win over me. I'll admit that, but you know what? It's how you did it. And I appreciate that you didn't let that stop you and you went ahead and did what you had to do to win. That's what I want to look. That's what I look for in a faction or a teammate or an alliance, and maybe it brings them closer together. Something like that they'll reveal on Dynamite after Mox wins, but let's predict Moxley to win that. Jade Cargill defending the TBS title against Ty Conti. Love Ty Conti. Who doesn't? But let's have Jade retain there. I think she will. Chris Jericho taking on Eddie Kingston. Jericho, got to give him props for getting himself into amazing shape. I mean, he was being body shamed by a lot of the audience just a few weeks back, a couple of months ago, because of how he looked. And I was one of the ones that was the first ones to defend him. I'm like, he's in his 50s. Wait, why don't you take your shirt off and look your ass in the mirror when you're in your 50s? But then he makes this incredible turnaround. We've noticed it progressively on Dynamite the last few weeks, where he looks better and better and better. Last Wednesday, he looked good. He looked tanned. He looked skinny. He had a six-pack rocking. And I was just proud of him. I'm like, way to go, Jericho. He got himself in shape. But no, that's not good enough for wrestling Twitter. They're either the same people that were fat shaming him now are skeptical and suspicious about how he got in shape that quickly. As if the idea of intense dieting, exercising, perhaps even reducing your alcohol consumption, you don't have to look any further than Jon Moxley to see what that'll do to you. The idea that's less likely than Jericho being a crackhead cracks me up. No, it's the crack that's doing it, not diet, exercise, or anything like that. He must be doing it. He must be cheating to get that way. It's just the fucking logic that these people come up with blows my mind. Like I said, when you're 51, when you're 52, take your shirt off and stand in the mirror. See if you look better than Jericho. I doubt you will. But Jericho and Eddie, it's an interesting match. I'd put Eddie over here. It would give him that big one that Jericho's been referencing in the promos, and Jericho is such an icon by this point. He's one of those names. He can lose, not going to do anything to him. So I think Eddie benefits more from a win. I think the fans are always behind Kingston no matter what. Dude can cut a promo like no one else. Both of these guys are kind of old, past their prime. It doesn't really matter who wins at all. I really don't care. Jericho could win, fine. I don't think it's going to really matter in the grand scheme of things at all. But I think this could be a sleeper match because athletically, we're not expecting much from it. So I think maybe it could surprise us. And I'm going to put Eddie Kingston over this time. I think he's going to beat Chris Jericho. Don't know why. It's just the way I feel. Tag Team Championships on the line. Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus defending against Red Dragon and the Young Bucks in a three-way dance for the tag team titles. I think we're going to see a title change here. Red Dragon and Young Bucks are kind of on the same page, but not really. They were standing side by side last night on Rampage, but that's not going to last. Young Bucks have already had a healthy run with those titles. I'm putting the belts on Red Dragon. I think that would be fun. Do it before Bobby Fish gets hurt, and you put the belts on them. That will add more dissension to the Young Bucks, which will then isolate Adam Cole as to which way, he's going to sway. And plus, I don't expect Cole to win the title later on. So you need his crew to have some sort of good news there. So I think Red Dragon is going to win the Tag Team Championships, and I can't wait to see it. Face of Revolution ladder match. Keith Lee versus Orange Cassidy versus Powerhouse Hobbs versus Ricky Starks versus Wardlow versus Christian Cage. So we got three big guys, one regular sized guy and two little guys. So if you're Cassidy or Starks, you're going to grab that ladder and scurry up there and grab that brass ring or whatever the fuck it is as quickly as possible. But when you look at the field, Wardlow makes a lot of sense, but I'd probably have Wardlow winning this if it weren't for Keith Lee. And I think Keith Lee, even though he's a big guy and he might break that damn ladder walking up it, I think you kind of got to put him over here. Unless something happens, he's taken out somewhere. Maybe somebody comes out and attacks him or whatever. Or he is just getting into it with somebody else in the match, like a Powerhouse Hobbs. Maybe they're on the outside fighting, or they take each other out by crashing through a barricade or doing a spot through a crash pad or something, and that allows everybody else to battle in the match and somebody else wins. I don't know. But if this match all just kind of takes place within the confines of the ring and the outside of the ring, I'm putting Keith Lee over in this and giving him a TNT title shot ASAP, because Lee is awesome and Lee is over. Dr. Britt Baker defending her AEW title against Thunder Rosa. Man, oh man, I just don't know. I'm going to go Baker. I'm going to predict Britt Baker to retain. Some people might feel like she's ripe. Some people feel like if she was going to drop the title to anybody, it was going to be Thunder Rosa. But based on the fact that Thunder Rosa got that win in that unsanctioned match, I'm just going to pick Britt Baker to retain. CM Punk taking on MJF, dog collar match. I just talked about that based on everything that we've seen. If Punk loses this, I'll be very surprised. MJF has basically gotten the better of Punk in every exchange, every promo, every interview, every match. He's beat him a couple times, beat him that one time twice in one match, didn't he? And then he's gotten the best of him in promos and all that stuff. So, and he's faked him out and swerved him a couple of times. So in the end, I think CM Punk and MJF are going to both have a very violent match, something that is going to rival Piper and Valentine from Starrcade 83. Then in the end, I think CM Punk is going to win. And then in the main event, Adam and Adam, Paige and Cole, singles match for the AEW World Championship. again, a Hangman Page. I think Adam Cole will have his day. I just don't think that day will be tomorrow. Plus, when you kind of do the math of what you saw at the end of Dynamite on Wednesday with Cole tying up Page and rubbing the belt in his face, come on, buckshot lariat for the win here. Hangman Page will retain, I believe, and continue his run to potentially drop that title at Double or Nothing, a show that I will be at. I bought tickets yesterday for Double or Nothing. Great seats right on the bottom level there. It's going to be awesome. So if you're going to be in Vegas, Memorial Day weekend, Double or Nothing weekend, let me know. We're going to plan a fan meetup for sure. So just to recap, Hook over QT Marshall, Layla Hirsch over Chris Statlander. I got House of Black over Death Triangle. I've got Sammy, Darby, and Sting over AHFO. Moxley over Danielson. Jade over Ty Conti. Eddie Kingston over Jericho. Red Dragon to win the tag team titles in that three-way. Keith Lee to win the ladder match. Britt Baker to retain over Thunder Rosa. CM Punk to beat MJF in the dog collar match. And Hangman Page to retain his AEW title against Adam Cole. Now, I think that only gives me one championship match change or one title change on this whole show, and that's Red Dragon winning the tag team titles. So I could be wrong there. We definitely could see possibly Thunder Rosa win the AEW women's title. I definitely think it's possible. So we shall see. Anyway, I am finishing up right at the top of the hour, which is exactly when I got to get out of here. I want to thank everybody for being here today. Donnie Games, I'm doing great. Hopefully you are as well. I appreciate everybody being here this afternoon. Thank you for the support. Thank you for the super chats. Thank you for the comments. Make sure you are here tomorrow night immediately following Revolution for a full show review. Just click on my page right now. The link is already up and ready. And right after that pay-per-view tomorrow night, join us right here and we will talk about all of it. And like I said, the MSG house show is going on, I think either right now or it's about to start in the next hour. If you have updates on that show, things you want to send me on Twitter, please do so at Good Mic Work. I got to leave the house here for a few hours and head to work, so I'm not going to be able to monitor this as closely as I would like. But if Cody shows up, or Austin shows up, or Goldberg shows up, or Macho Man Randy Savage comes back from the dead, please let me know over on Twitter what's going on. And like I said, if it's anything major or earth-shattering, I will record a video late tonight and have it on YouTube for you tomorrow so you can watch it over breakfast. You guys have a great rest of your Saturday night. Please smash that thumbs up button on your way out the door, and I will catch you tomorrow night after Revolution. Y'all be good.